Accompanying people is spending time with them. In the end, when we are talking about spiritual accompaniment, there must be a moment when we meet with that young person, young man or young lady, who we are accompanying. What I would like to do is to give you an outline that can help you make that time meaningful. That's what I call the encounter. What I'm going to share with you are simply indications. They are descriptions, not prescriptions. The important thing is that you can adapt these points that I will share to your life as a person and to the lives of the people you are working with. Basically, an encounter, that moment when you spend time with the person that you are spiritually accompanying, has three parts. The first part is before the actual meeting. What does this mean? It means that meetings are always to be prepared beforehand. Encounters are prepared in prayer. And when you are going to meet a young man or a young lady, you must clearly decide what will make that time with the person meaningful and important for the person you're going to be working with. So the first part of the encounter is preparation. Preparation in prayer. Preparation in intercession for the person you're going to meet. Prayer asking the Lord truly to give you discernment, to give you wisdom, to give you the ability to understand what is going on in that person's life. And that you have a clear goal of what you want to achieve through the encounter. The second part of the encounter is, and forgive the redundancy, the encounter itself, when we're already spending time with the person. Regularly, when I'm spending time with a person, when I'm holding the meeting, there are some things that I always try to include and make sure are present. First, it is asking the Holy Spirit to join our conversation. This is tremendously important to me because spiritual accompaniment is a three-way game. It is the young person I'm working with, it is me, but it is also the Holy Spirit who speaks to the young person's heart and speaks to my own heart. There is always the invitation for the Holy Spirit to join. Another ingredient that I always try to have present in my spiritual accompaniment during the encounter is to ask the person what God is doing in his or her life. How has he been able to see the Lord's intervention in his life since the last time we met? This is something tremendously important. Why? Because many times God, who is always working in our lives, goes unnoticed. When we ask the young person to think about it, to be conscious of it, to be intentional about it, we can help him discern and identify the work of God in his life. Another thing that I always try to have present at the meeting is a follow-up on the issues that we have previously worked on. In a previous video, I was talking about the importance of setting goals when working with young people. If we set goals, we must follow up. When I meet a young person, I always try to follow up on the goals that he has set out to achieve and that he is working to achieve between these meetings. I do this in a very simple way, by asking, what progress have you made on your goals? What progress have you made in the practical steps that you decided to take? Once I have done this, that is, that I've invited the Holy Spirit, that I've asked Him to identify God's work in His daily life since the last time we met, that we have followed up on what He pledged to do, I always set the goal of our conversation, and I do it in a very simple way. What would make this conversation, this time we're going to spend together, meaningful to you? What would you like us to work on? When we say goodbye, what do you want to take with you? This is tremendously important because the encounter is not simply to have a good time together, which is also part of it, but it is to help the young person have Christ form in his life and be able to contribute to the kingdom. Let us remember that this is the purpose of spiritual accompaniment. Once we have established what the purpose of our time together is, through active listening, through questions, and through feedback, we will work on that topic that we've decided will be the center of our conversation. Finally, what we are going to do is to ask the young person to identify what practical steps, what goals he wants set to move forward on the topic we've been working on. And finally, we will end up in prayer, thanking God for the time we've had together. So, we talked about the three parts of the encounter: preparation before the meeting itself, and then what we do after the meeting, which is the third part. This is through prayer, through intercession, and maintaining informal communication with the person to make sure the person is moving forward. So let me summarize this in a very brief way. The encounter is that moment when spiritual accompaniment is shaped in an intentional way. The meeting has three parts: the preliminary preparation, the meeting itself, and the continuation of that meeting. In the meeting itself, remember that what we do is to invite the Holy Spirit to join us, to identify God's work in that person's life, to follow up on the practical steps or goal that the person has decided to take. We also establish what will be the goal or purpose of our conversation. Work through that. Then ask him to identify practical steps, however small, that will help him move forward. Obviously, that is a formal encounter, but remember, spiritual accompaniment is an attitude. It's a mindset. Whenever you encounter that person, even in situations that are purely informal and unstructured, you can have an influence on that person's life. One of the things my wife Sarah and I do every day when we start the day is to ask God to help us to be able to be a blessing to the people we are going to interact with. Why? Because spiritual accompaniment is a mindset that is sometimes shaped in concrete situations such as the encounter, but that is lived out in all times.